Morning, everybody. How we doing? I've had swimmer's ear the last 4 days, water in my ear, cool out back, and I have hardly heard anything out of this ear for the last 3 days. It got better last night, kind of plugged up again overnight. Kind of annoying not being able to listen to music. It's not really painful, it's just I have this echo, and I'm sure my lungs had swimmer's ear. But hopefully I'm on the uptick. But today, first of all, I want to speak about, I don't even really call it a pet peeve, I guess it's just a rant. Someone commented on one of my videos the other day, and this guy often comments in a conflictory kind of way. I'm not saying he's not true to his convictions. I think he probably is. It's not like he's just trolling, trying to start stuff. But I find a lot of his opinions to be very polarizing and very diametrically opposite of where I come from. And over the years, we've had numerous exchanges, never ugly or nothing. And I hadn't heard from him for quite a while, and he posted on a video the other day. And if you're watching, I'm sure you know who you are. But the comment he made was just so, I don't want to say offensive or insulting. Yeah, on some level I felt somewhat offended, and in no way personally. It was not a personal thing. But his comment on jazz, it was on the greatest band of all time episode. Clifford Brown, Max Roach, Sonny Rollins, George Morrow, and Richie Powell. Those two records they made together are some explosive, dynamic, just wonderful hard bop, elements of the blues, elements of interesting arrangement. Powell's arrangements are really clever, swing hard, the whole thing's, everything grooves, everything is melodically pleasing. The diversity of the tracks are as widely varied as what's on the Cooking, Working, Even Relaxing sessions. And I would say those two sets of records fit kind of well together as kind of the genesis of hard bop, and along with Blakey Silver, what's happening at Blue Note, you know, and of course Blue Note becomes the home of hard bop, 55, 6, 7, 8, 59. Columbia dabbles in it. There's only a few hard bop records on Columbia, you know, and the stuff that's happening at Prestige and Riverside, there's some good stuff. Riverside's kind of still getting into its swing of things. Prestige is still putting out a lot of its back catalog. A lot of it's that post-bop modern stuff that's coming out that's not really hard bop. They touch on it at times. It's like Cooking, Working, Even Relaxing are great showcases of an evolving hard bop sound, but those are by no means hard bop records in their entirety. There's just moments where they absolutely capture hard bop. But the band was so fantastic, and I wasn't saying in any kind of definite way that's the greatest group of all time, but I certainly think that it's one of the most talented groups of all time, and had it had more time to live out its destiny, and Clifford Brown had not passed, and Richie Powell, rest in peace, both you gentlemen. Someone commented too that Sonny Rollins said he misses Clifford Brown every day, and I think that tells you something. Clifford Brown was just an average Joe. Clifford Brown was a magnanimous person who I think instilled others around in him in a belief, and I think he had the real potential to have jazz reascend, to be Armstrong-like in its appeal. A lot of what jazz does post Clifford Brown's passing, melody and danceability are both kind of being removed, and not all of the Clifford Brown stuff's danceable. Some of the tempos are too fast, but they certainly know how to swing the blues, and they certainly know how to make things swing, and some of that stuff is actually quite danceable, and it's a great group regardless. And I wasn't saying in any kind of definitive way, but I was asking, I'm like, is this one of the greatest groups ever that we don't really recognize as being that? And the comment was, of that era? Question mark. And the exact comment kind of escapes me, but he was saying that jazz is so much better, so much greater, has accomplished so much more nowadays than what this old-fashioned jazz ever did. And he's always kind of derogative towards that era, thinking that these new kids and some of the stuff from the last 20 years, 30 years, whatever, is so much more important, progressive. I have a hard time finding the words to describe it because I find most of it childish and banal. I find most of it spiritless, soulless, gutless, artsy, intellectual prog rock. I find a lot of it just to be ego-driven, look how good I am, lacking all feeling, lacking all sense of the blues, not even being connected to the roots of swing and the blues that jazz is. Most of this modern music there's something missing. I don't feel it. I feel the same way about a lot of the neo-soul, neo-funk, some of that Daftone stuff. I have a lot of that stuff. But somehow there's always a bit of a missing ingredient because it feels like a facsimile. It doesn't have the same genuine, this is my language and I'm speaking it out of necessity. It's someone coming down the road later and saying, oh, I like that language. Let me learn how to speak it. And in the case of a lot of this modern jazz, it's so being derived from the 60s forward. There's not a lot of jazz cats out there today saying, oh, I want to reinvent or redo hard bop or bebop or that post-bop modern. It's mostly they want to redo that 60s compositional intellectual avant-garde. And some of that's great. Some of it's awful. A lot of it doesn't need to be reinterpreted or redone or rehashed. It's such a small chapter of the history of jazz. And for so much of the modern jazz expression, we're so limited to that one vocabulary. I find it frustrating. And I think it's a big reason why so much of the perception of jazz today among non-jazz people is it's just a music of intellectualism. It's just about, oh, you have to be really smart to get it. You have to be really smart to play it. And you think that couldn't be further from the truth. It couldn't be further from what, apologies, my phone battery, actually my storage got full. I had to go empty some stuff. But that couldn't be further from what the message of jazz is. Intellectualism, deep thought, concentration has nothing to do with the blues or jazz. And it can actually hinder just letting a guy swing, just letting a guy feel. And to have the opinion, and again, opinions are great. Anyone can have one, you know. But I feel like it does a real disservice and shows a lot of disrespect to the founders of this canon, the builders of this home. This is a sacred house, a sacred temple. And to say that the people who write about the Bible today are the most insightful and best biblical scholars of all time versus the people who actually wrote the Bible, it's a little sacrilegious. And I think a great parallel that a lot of you might understand is if on some level a band like Pink Floyd or Yes, Asia, something kind of prog rock, in 30 years' time, all rock and roll was just interpreting that, and all the greatest critics and all these people today were saying, oh, our rock and roll is so great. All this prog, mathematic intellectualism. There would be an element of people who said, you know what? Rock and roll actually was fun at one point. It actually used to make you dance. It used to make you lose your mind. It used to be so sexual, simple, fun. And I'm a big Pink Floyd fan. Not as big a Yes fan. Not really an Asia fan at all. Again, that stuff's Dream Dragons ain't my thing. Whether it's jazz or rock and roll, I just don't really live in that place. I like to feel the human connection of reality. And for me, the Black experience and overcoming that struggle and that power of this art form to help them overcome that pain and that sorrow and that fear and that terror. Jazz was soothing. It was a place of joy and freedom. And if we don't recognize that that's sacred, we're kind of missing the entire point of what this music is. And it's not denying that these changes happen, and that intellectualism comes in and ego comes in, and it makes it want to be more my creation, my solidarity, about me, and look how great my comprehension, my composition, my intellectualism is. But even the monks and the Parkers weren't intellectual. It was just how they felt it. And it took intellectuals to break down what they were doing. And then intellectualism slowly takes over. And when you get to guys like Herbie Hancock and even Charlie Mingus, there's a real balance between composition and intellectualism versus soul, swing, and groove. And I think those guys straddle the line. I think Hancock crosses the line at times and kind of comes back and forth. But he always has the blues kind of in his rearview mirror, at least. And Mingus, for all of his vulgarities and bold decisions he makes, somehow he always knows that the swing and the blues is the current that provides the electricity. And if I don't bring that pulse back, all of my cacophony will be for naught. It's the cacophony that kind of illustrates and colors the beauty of the simple swing. And when I'm swinging simply and I show you what the cacophony sounds like, it almost makes you value and appreciate, oh, that's why that's so cool. Because music could just be this. And this does create tension, it does create agitation, it does create discomfort. And music could be nothing but discomfort, which some of the European tradition, classical music, exceeds itself with the level of discomfort. Some psychedelic rock became very uncomfortable. The blues is never uncomfortable. Swing, jazz in its first 3 decades was never uncomfortable. It was alluring, enticing. The sophistication wasn't in the intellectualism of it, but rather in its ability to emote and improvise my feelings over a sexual pulse groove. It was so refreshing. It drew people in. The Siren Song. You could be white bread as a country poke walking past that blues R&B club and hear some bassies swinging out that door, and suddenly there's a part of you going, man, I've never nodded my head before like this. I've never tapped my foot like this. I never knew how to find a groove. That is something I never, it's so easy to fall into. You don't have to be a super good dancer, or even a dancer at all, to nod your head to a good beat. Hip-hop, reggae, soul, R&B, if the beat's good, you can nod your head to it. And most dance music, even when you get into disco and pop and all that stuff today, it's about simple sexual pulsing. And jazz was that birthplace of arranged pulsing with improvised expression over top of that pulsing. And so I just have a real problem with the concept that jazz is greater today than it's ever been, that jazz is growing in leaps and bounds, and it's no. There's so few cats out there doing jazz that I've heard, and I'm not out listening to a lot of it, I'll be honest, but I do hear enough. People share stuff with me, once in a while I'll go to Spotify, but YouTube, but if I'm listening to music, I try to put my vinyl on, and I have some newer stuff on vinyl, but my days of needing to have that really abstract piece that's going to make everyone impressed with how intellectual I am, the posturing of that. Oh, I used to be that. Let me play some Sun Ra and some John Coltrane, and and let everyone see that my monocle is wonderful. See how well my eye is monocled? Like it's just a little bit pretentious at times. You know, it's like liking a really spicy meal. You're showing off a little bit, saying I can eat this, and I kind of enjoy it, but I also enjoy looking at your faces. I enjoy looking at your responses to me. But that guy doesn't expect you all to partake in the meal. He's not forcing you all to have a mouthful of that hot stuff. That guy who puts on that dangerous record for a crowd of people is forcing everyone else to kind of, and it's just driven away the casual jazz fan. It's driven away the curious jazz fan. And the notion and the concept that so many non-jazz fans have, that jazz is so intellectual and so sophisticated and so complicated that it's because we're only prophesying and putting out there this regurgitated, ego-driven, intellectual slice of what was a much bigger pie. And so, again, I appreciate your comment. I appreciate your opinion. I ain't mad at you, as Tupac once said. I ain't mad at you. Do what you do. Feel how you feel. And again, I said, offense is not really the right word, but it's sacred. What these innovators who created this music did was make something joyous. And to think that there's no value, or that it's been so far surpassed by some white kid at a Juilliard or any music school who might have chops and intellectualism, but he's lacking the experience to understand that what we were really after was relief. That kid's not struggled enough to know that most people ain't looking for intellectual music. Most people are looking for relief, joy in their music. Most people want to feel good when they hear music. And jazz was that for the country through the Depression, through Prohibition. Jazz was the greatest of celebrations. And it's why white America, especially all them kids, just latched onto it. And, you know, Parker and Dizzy and Monk and those cats, they wanted to get it away from the saccharine side of commercialized swing, which the big record labels were definitely, you know, they ruined it as much as bebop ever did. Those saccharine put record after record from the great Columbias and Deccas and RCAs of all this white band swinging pablum, baby food that lacks any real guts or feeling or sexuality even. Whitewash doesn't begin to describe a lot of it. And if you buy enough records, you go to enough record stores, you realize that all these black legends that we seek and look for, they're really rare and obscure and hard to find. The average jazz section has 90% crap. Some of it's fun to collect, some of it has cool covers. Some of them might have a few great players on it, and you're like, oh, I like him enough, I'm going to dig into that. But most of it's just, it makes you realize why a guy like Parker and any of those guys said, man, let's get away from that. And let's try to play something a little more expressive. And Parker was already doing it. Parker, after hours, and even on the bandstand, he was kind of saying, here's your rules. I got a whole bunch of this for you. And he would just extrapolate within the confines in such an effortless way. You know, that's the magic of Parker. You know, it's such a magical thing. And I wish we had more recordings of Parker in a setting more conducive to Parker being the modern thinker and feeler and groover that he was. Because a lot of the Parker we got is either poor recordings, you know, Savoy Dial, all those errors, and some of those recordings are okay and capture some of it, but they sound dated. They don't sound high fidelity, which drives half the audience away right off the bat. And then we have some great Verve recordings that Norman Granz did, but a lot of that stuff was pretty saccharine in terms of the strings and made for with voices. And I just listened to that Verve 8007 or 8. I can't think what it's called right now, but those first 10 records, I guess 8009 I think actually. And there's a lot of voices on it with him, you know, kind of white choirs of choral singing, and it's interesting. And Parker's still fantastic because Parker, you know, he just does what he does. It wasn't thought out. It was just, that's how I do. Anyway, we're gonna move on real quick. Again, sorry for the fans. I got 2 fans in the windows over there. It's a hot, muggy summer in Minnesota. People see northern continental, and they don't realize how hot Minnesota is in the summer. Because we've had a hotter summer than normal, too. It's only 9:30, 10 a.m., and I got a little bead on my forehead. But the fans had to be on, or else I would be dripping. And I've actually turned a few fans off in order for the sound to be better. But you can definitely hear them in these summer episodes. But until I get air conditioning, I'm not going to do this episode not in the record room. I need to have my records with me and music. And so it's something we'll have to deal with for now. Last thing I want to talk about is Lorez Alexandria. She's a great black church gospel singer that has an interesting career. And she's someone you don't really discover early on as a collector. You kind of have to dig a little bit because she's on labels that aren't going to really expose you to her too quickly. And most people are going to come across her first via her Impulse records. Because most of us, through John Coltrane, become quite conscious of Impulse. And with the spines and the packaging, it's not hard to be flipping through some records and know an Impulse when you see it. It's not like Pacific Records where if you don't really know, you'll flip by and not even know it. It's hard to flip by an Impulse and not recognize, oh, that was an Impulse. And so when you're flipping through records and you see Impulse and you know Coltrane and you know Yusef Lateef and you know Pharoah Saunders and you know whoever else, Coleman Hawkins, you know, you see this Lorez Alexandria on Impulse. And that was obviously where I came into her, was through her Impulse records, which there are 2 of, but they're kind of actually at the tail end of this era. And what she does before that is really outstanding stuff with elements of blues, gospel, R&B, early rock and roll, jazz, swing. She has a lot of great dynamics to her. On the record for Lester Young, she does a lot of scatting, playing Lester Young solos with her mouth. But this is Lorez on King, and their first 4 records were on King. This was probably 56. This is Lorez, number 542, and the King sequence starts at 500. And there's a 10-inch series before that that's in the 3/400s, but for the most part, King starts at 500. But again, they do go back. And that 565, not that long after, a late session at an intimate club. Really nice record. She does some great scatting on this one as well, if I recall. And these are pretty tough to come by, her King records. Although these 2 are in reprint right now. And they're, I don't know if it's Fresh Sound, but these are both available now. I just got these 2, which is why I'm going to do a shout out to her right now. The Band Swings and Lorez Sings, 657. And I think that's, no, this is the one here where one of these she's doing Lester Young, and she does a great job of singing. I think it's this one. Sing song everybody knows. One of these she's doing Lester Young songs. There's an alternate title for it too. I think it's that one. But there's quite a bit of diversity to these records, from beautiful ballads to up-tempo, peppy, gospel blues. She has a real nice tone. She can really sing expressively and emotively, or she can just be kind of fun and boisterous. You know, she's a black woman. Like, that's the black woman I know. She seems like half the black woman I knew back in the day when I was doing that soul gig. Capable of a lot. From soft and tender to, if I need a rough house with you, I can. Like, it's just a different thing being a black woman. And you have to look out for your black children in a tough place and time. You know, there's nothing more stressful in this world, I don't think, than being a black mother. It's ain't like being a white parent, and being a white parent's hard. Trust me, that's a hard job. I'm a step parent of 2 teenage boys. It's a tough job, but being a black parent, you worry about your child every day in a different kind of way. The variables and the alternatives and the scenarios that they potentially could run into on a given day are of so much greater consequence than what the average white kid runs into. And you know, white kids aren't without struggle. You know, depression and suicide is rampant in today's society. It's almost like a badge of honor how depressed you are nowadays. It seems like kids are strange nowadays. Culture, commercialization, a lack of hope. It's all bred. A child that doesn't really want to learn, just wants to be part of this virtual reality world, and then the real world feels disconnected and lost. Without achievement, without accomplishment. All my achievement was virtual. So here I am trying to look in the mirror in the real world, getting done with school. Who am I going to be? I forgot to do that part. I forgot to look into that. I'm really good virtually. You should see my avatar. You see my records. I'm fantastic. But we're missing life training somehow nowadays. Kids spend too much time in front of a screen, not enough time living, connecting with life, exploring self. I think one of the biggest problems is kids don't have enough downtime to be bored. Boredom drives innovation and creativity and inspiration. Boredom is where, okay, this sucks. I'm tired of being bored. What am I going to do to excite myself? And I need to find interest in something. The kids don't get enough downtime nowadays to get bored enough to look for something. But Lorez's 4 records on King, again, it took me a while to find them. And you see there's a great... Fantastic. And she doesn't really have a Sarah Vaughan, not really an Ella, not really a Billy. She has her own thing, you know. She's hard to really compare to someone. I don't really hear a lot of others in her, but I do hear a lot of the church in her, you know. Moving on. She makes 4 records at Argo. And I've had these for years, and these are great records. And the first one's with the great Ramsey Lewis trio, Early in the Morning, and some of Basie's Cats as well. The band on this is outstanding. I did this on an episode before. This is great stuff. Outstanding. Number 663, probably about 1967 that comes out. And then she follows that up shortly after, 682, probably 67 or 8. Sing No Sad Songs for Me. And this is another fantastic Argo session. Stereo copy of that. And then she follows that up with Deep Roots. Another stereo copy, 694. And great record. And then this is a promo copy of this. This is Laura's Alexandria for Swingers Only, number 720. Probably puts out about 1960. Fantastic cover. I love her with the blonde hair there, looking outstanding. All 4 of those Argo records are really great records, and if you're into bluesy, gospel, R&B inflected jazz singers, Lorez Alexandria is for you. She's wonderful. So that leads us to her Impulse records, where she makes this one A62, and then this one, which is A76. And again, these are the first 2 most people are going to see. They probably were just sold and distributed better. The Argos were distributed probably okay. They're not impossible to find, but they're definitely climbing in price. And they said those King records are pretty rare. Some of those go for pretty good money if you can track them down. So that wraps up today's episode. I got a fun episode coming up for you soon where I'm going to show you the other parts of my record collection. I've dove pretty deep into my jazz reorganization, but I've also been sorting out a lot of my other genres and stuff. So I'm going to show some of that stuff to you, which I think should be interesting to most people. Y'all be safe. My name is Dan. I'm the Jazz Shepherd. Take care.